Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Robert Winfree, and this is Damn You Hollywood. Thank you all very much for being here. Tonight, I don't have a witty intro. I'm sorry I don't have it in me. I've been battling kind of a head and throat cold since Sunday. So I apologize if my voice starts kind of giving out. I believe I'm adequately prepared, but should it start, cracking or giving out on me, that's why. So please have a little bit of patience with me. Tonight, at the last minute, underwent a couple of minor revisions. Tonight we will be talking about Assassin's Creed because we are. That was the movie we decided would occupy this particular slot. Even though Mark and I were both a little bit reticent about it, and once I looked at the 3 movies that came out last weekend and realized it was the least interesting of the 3. And then Mark wound up taking a personal day off of the show. Mark will not be joining us this evening. He is, I believe, either at the moment or in the very near future, for those of you listening live, going to be on his YouTube channel doing a tribute to Carrie Fisher, who we learned passed away today. And fortunately, you will not be cursed with listening to me talk to myself for 90 minutes, because nobody wants that. Here with me, as was always the plan, because he is a substantial fan of the game series, Sean Comer is with us. This, I believe, is your first time on this particular show. Sean, how you doing this evening?
It is indeed my first time. Hi, Robert. Hi, everybody. I'm Sean. You're not. This movie, by all indications, was terrible, and I now just want Hollywood to start leaving my video games alone. Just hands off them. Don't touch.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice. Okay, before we get into the movie proper, I do want to get a little bit of your background, because, again, you and I have both played through all the games. I've played through the majority of them.
Well, no, not all of them. They've been kind of deep in my backlog for a little bit. The ones I have played through I've played through the first game. I played through the Ezio trilogy. In fact, I played the first game of the Ezio trilogy each several times through. I opted not to play 3 because I heard the reviews were extremely iffy. And I have every intention, once my money problems finally alleviate, I pick up a PS4 in the near future, to pick up Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Yeah, I'm skipping Unity entirely. I don't care that everybody says that the patches fixed it. I really don't like rewarding games that release half done. So
I can
that
speak
one,
for
that one
Syndicate.
down entirely.
Syndicate's a fun experience. At least I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I was really skeptical about Syndicate, but I heard that it's really a return to form, and it's also the last one that they released before Ubisoft made the decision everybody had been begging them to, and that was to just take a year off, stop trying to push these things out every 12 months, and sit back and really regroup the franchise.
So again, before we get into the actual movie, I'm just your brief thoughts on the gaming franchise, what you like about it, and what some of your hopes were for a film adaptation thereof.
Well, my thoughts on the gaming franchise are thus. For something that tries to basically juggle 3 concurrent plot threads, it starts off on a surprisingly strong foot. For those of you who have never played it, and again, I want to stress, I did not get a chance to see the movie yet. I intended to, but again, money got kind of tight and I wasn't able to make it to the theater. So I'm here mostly as a gaming and video game movie in general, sort of a consultant, analyst, if you will. The idea is the series follows basically 3 major threads. You have what I'll call the precursor thread, which is the one that goes clear back to the ancient dawn of man, and it posits that a race of ancient aliens uplifted humanity, fell in love with humans, had sexy times with humans, and gave birth to the hybrid race of Homo sapiens that essentially became the assassins. There is then what I'll just call the historical plot line, which runs from the days of the Crusades all the way up to the modern plot thread, which I'll get to in a moment. The historical thread follows the war between the assassins and the Templars, who are an ancient order who pursue pieces of Eden, which are artifacts left behind by the precursors, and will supposedly grant their possessors the potential to control all of humanity, destroy all their foes. They're basically all-powerful MacGuffins. The assassins are the sworn enemy of the Templars, who seek to keep these artifacts out of their hands. The Templars want them to rule over everyone. Basically, it's absolute power. And these artifacts pass from one side to the other down throughout the centuries. Then there's a modern thread in which a massive umbrella corporation, no, not the umbrella corporation, just an overall all-powerful corporate entity known as Abstergo, which is the modern incarnation of Templars, continues to seek out the pieces of Eden, but they have harnessed technology that allows them to peer into DNA and extract genetic memory, which is an actual scientific term that is drastically misused and mutated and exaggerated in the series, basically indicating that they can basically parse someone's DNA and use it to actually interactively view ancient memories of an individual's ancestors. In this case, throughout the first part of the series, they have kidnapped a modern-day assassin by the name of Desmond Miles because they've deduced that that his heritage goes back to several key assassins who have played pivotal roles in battles for the pieces of Eden throughout history. In the first game, the ancestor is, and I apologize if I butcher his name, Altair ibn Lahad, who is an assassin who battled the Templars during the time of the Christian Crusades in the Holy Land. In the next 3 games, known as the Ezio trilogy, which is Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and Assassin's Creed Revelations, he lives out the memories of Ezio Auditore da Firenze, which, for those of you who speak a little bit of Italian, is exactly what it says on the tin. He is a Florentine playboy who embraces his assassin heritage when his father, himself an assassin, his 2 brothers are betrayed and murdered by powerful Templars. And in an Assassin's Creed Revelations, it's basically, or Brotherhood Revelations, it's the continuation of his thread. And, well, we won't go too much into them because I pretty much explained everything. But then from there, he also lives out the memories of Connor Kenway, an American Indian ancestor who battled the Templars during the Revolutionary War. And then from there, you have other modern-day assassins who relive the exploits of a pirate, a French revolutionary assassin, and a pair of assassins who were active in Victorian London. So my thoughts are, just limiting that to the games that I've played, the first game was an excellent story. It set everything up really well. It established the breathtaking visual standard that would just continue to improve throughout the rest of the series. And it got everything off to a good start. It displayed a lot of potential. That isn't to say it didn't have its problems, but it was starting things off on a very strong foot. The next 3 games are 3 of my favorites of all time, especially when played in sequence. And that's, as I said, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations. They basically iron out every single flaw of the first Assassin's Creed. The repetitive nature, the lack of depth, its excessive linearity. It even manages to make the otherwise pretty boring modern-day segments that frame the whole game and break it up into chapters much more engaging, much more entertaining, and just generally not equivalent to having teeth pulled when you have to sit through them just to get to the next chapter. And overall, it sets everything up as something that you would think would be pretty damn near impossible to fuck up in terms of something that you want to adapt to the big screen. I'll be
and yet,
Hollywood will somehow find a way.
Yeah. Let me go through my little plot synopsis here, and then I have a few things I want to mention about it from a technical standpoint. Mark gave me a couple of thoughts that he wanted me to relay to all of you. All right. As with the game franchise, we bounce around a little bit in terms of where we are chronologically. With the induction of one of the assassins into the Order, a brand new character, because that never goes wrong, by the name of... where's his name? No, the older one. Aguilar something or other. Just going with Aguilar. I'm terrible with Latin names. Much better with Eastern Europeans. Thank you to the world of MMA for familiarizing me with them. We open with Aguilar's introduction into the Order. We subsequently jump ahead in multiple year intervals. We meet Callum Lynch, who sees his father murder his mother. We then jump further ahead. Young Callum barely escapes what we come to know as the Templar organization. We meet up with him again many years later in a Texas prison where he is executed. Then, through methods never made wholly clear, but he's not really executed. He is taken after the pronouncement of his death by the Abstergo Corporation to be placed into, again, this funky little thing called the Animus, where we get the science fiction element of the story about genetic memory, so that they can find not a piece of Eden, but the actual apple. They singularize a lot of this, which I somewhat understand.
Well, but the thing is historically in the franchise, the apple is one of several pieces of Eden. If you'll remember.
And I imagine they had thoughts about getting to that for the following movies that we're never going to get. Because we'll talk about the money.
Oh, God, yes, we must talk about the money.
There are two somewhat conflicting forces within Abstergo. On the one hand, you have Marion Cotillard, who plays
Sophie Ricken.
Sophie Ricken. And you also have Jeremy Irons, who plays her father. They're both high-ranking Templars, but Jeremy Irons is in the inner circle, whereas Cotillard is more a little bit on the outside and approaching this whole project more from the scientific avenue, whereas Jeremy Irons kind of wants to rule the world, which is, fine and dandy. Through the course of we also meet several other assassins that they have taken and put through the Animus to gain information, so on and so forth, and Mark would yell at me if I did not mention that one of them happens to be Omar Little. They don't play a huge role in the narrative. They show up at the end when they all break out, but over the course of 3 separate instances where he is put into the Animus and they get to view his genetic memories to try and find the Apple of Eden. Callum goes through, a character arc, even though it's poorly written. He meets his father again, who had previously been captured and interrogated, for want of a better word. He is, driven by this dislike of his father and subsequently all assassins, and is prepared to hand over the apple to the Templars just as one more screw you to dad. He finally comes to his senses after they discover where his ancestor left the apple. The ancestor's backstory is given extraordinarily short shrift in just one of the major problems with this movie.
Oh, man.
They utilize the genetic memories more as an excuse to have action set pieces rather than tell an actual story, which is just such a major. It's a major problem.
And when you point that out, I want to point something out to everybody, because I basically got ignored by friends of mine when I said that this one moment gave me a bad feeling about this entire project. I want you to keep in mind that Michael Fassbender is not only the star of this movie, he's also an executive producer. He said very early on in this project's development, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, that he didn't play the games, he wasn't a gamer, and he had no intention of playing any of the games. And it was because he didn't want to be influenced by the source material. Michael, let me ask you, how did that work out for you?
Well, at a minimum, he kept his accent consistent, so we're giving it the old thumbs up.
For him, that's damn near Academy Award worthy effort.
Yeah, guys, I'm a big fan of Michael Fassbender as a general rule, but the fact that in X-Men First Class, the Magneto helmet also gave him back his Irish accent was a problem for me. Anyway, theoretically, the story with his ancestor is actually they actually did something right in theory, and they set it in a historical perspective at a time that's somewhat interesting. During the growth of the Spanish Inquisition, again within Spain, which is a really interesting setting that they could have exploited, but sadly not so much. Through the course of our flashbacks, we see, I believe they actually do name Father Torquemada, which is somewhat ironic because much as the man had a deserved reputation, there's a serious lack of understanding, not just within this movie, but within society in general, about how the Inquisition worked. Not saying it was a good thing, it was a terrible thing, but there's this notion that the Catholic Church was responsible for all of these deaths, which is true in the general sense, but the Church never actually executed anyone. That was part of the whole setup, was like the government couldn't torture people. Certainly not over religious issues, but the Church could. The Church just couldn't execute anyone. So the Church would then, the government would arrest people, hand them over to the Church would extract confessions, they would hand them back over to the state for execution. It was a really weird logistical thing that had to go on for most of that. But they escape execution. We get a really cool chase sequence. Because one of the best things about the game franchise is free running through wherever you happen to be going through, and avoiding large groups of guards, and they get that sequence basically right. Anyway, it turns out that his ancestor had actually given the Apple of Eden to Christopher Columbus, and it was buried with him. As this is discovered, the members of the Templar organization decide, well, now's a pretty good time to get out of Dodge and go get that. The assassins stage a takeover of the facility. The Templars actually do recover the Apple of Eden, at which point Jeremy Irons reveals to his daughter that, our plan, because she's under the impression that they're attempting to curb humanity's inherent violent tendencies. That's kind of what she's wanting to do, and approach it from a genetic perspective. Identify genetic markers that predispose people to violence and irrationality, and come up with treatments, therapies, et cetera, to, again, reduce the inherent violence that seems to pervade mankind. Jeremy Irons is more prepared to take that bit to its logical conclusion, which is, well, you all can't be trusted to make decisions for yourselves. The apple is explicitly stated to contain a complete genetic code for humanity, which includes somewhere within it the genetic markers for free will. As though this is a genetic thing and not something... Never mind, sorry. Not going to yell about that. That's a whole other subject. Whole other subject. Some suspension of disbelief is required for this movie, for properties like this to work. I shouldn't yell about it too much.
Which isn't that different from the games, let's face it. And actually, the way you just explained that, as someone who hasn't seen it and has no intention of seeing it, okay, credit where it's due. That's actually in keeping pretty well with the spirit of Abstergo and the Templars throughout the game. So, okay, I'll give you this. You got that part right.
And there's a few things they get right. There's just so much that they get wrong, and there's so many errors of execution. Anyway, after the Templars recover the apple, they are set to present it within their big secret Masonic temple. The assassins break in, kill Jeremy Irons, steal the apple. Marion Cotillard swears revenge, and the movie ends with the theoretical reigniting of the war between the assassins and the Templars, as Callum and the group that he was with tried to protect said apple from the resurgent Templars. Look, this movie's a mess. It's mostly a fault of the script and the writing, because the acting is quite good. Fassbender gets to stretch his legs in a couple of different areas. He gets to believably be a guy about to be executed, which is a difficult thing to do, but he goes through that pretty well. His confrontation with his fathers, again, it's well acted. Marion Cotillard's a fine actor. Jeremy Irons is, a very good actor. So when they actually have decent material to work with and you let these people act, naturally, it kind of works. Unfortunately, the narrative structure, the dialogue in many places, and the action is just... I don't know if I'm in the minority or not when it comes to how I perceived the action sequences here, but I couldn't stand them. They were all full of things I hate in action sequences. Namely, shaky cam aggravates me to death, especially when it's overused. Lots of very quick interspersed cuts because we must unbalance the viewer rather than allow them to actually absorb what's going on screen. And gobs of CGI that varies from passable to, yeah, you really did fire that crossbow there, buddy.
Wait. Back that truck right the fuck up. They needed CGI to depict firing a crossbow.
They use CGI. I imagine they CGI'd the bolts, which was a terrible decision, by the way. Which leads me to a very brief point. Whoever thought this movie needed to have a 3D component needs to be flogged. All right?
Okay, wait. Still not making sense, because a crossbow, that's something that has been depicted in numerous movies as being with, a practical effect. The Walking Dead does it every goddamn week with a modern crossbow. You mean to tell me they couldn't figure out a way to do it with a Spanish Inquisition era model?
I don't know. I guess they couldn't.
Okay, right, Robert, right now, I am, to borrow a moment from one of my favorite movies, I am Obadiah Stane screaming at Stark Industries engineers, Tony Stark built this in a cave with scraps, except it's AMC does this for 13 episodes every year on a primetime cable budget. Explain your excuse to me for why you need CGI. The main things you should need CGI for in this movie, I would imagine, and again, I'm just spitballing this just based on what I imagine of the premise, is you might need it for a few of the more sweeping scenic shots, especially. Oh,
and boy, do they have just entirely too many of those.
Right, which, it being Assassin's Creed, I fully expect for reasons I'll get to in a moment. I imagine you would need it to depict eagle vision, of course.
There is no eagle vision. Unless you count the numerous times where we follow a CGI'd golden eagle as it swoops around. That is never explained.
Wait. You know full well that's not what I mean by eagle vision.
I do. I just had to get it out there. They blew the budget on their CGI'd golden eagle, apparently. I don't know.
That in the games, that's a very big thing, though. It's not just a divide. It basically implies that it's more or less something that the assassins themselves pretty much had. I know the bleeding effect is explained in this movie, the whole concept of you spend too much time in the animus enmeshed in these genetic memories, and eventually their memories and their skills start to bleed over to the actual subject. I know that's in the movie. How do you depict that without depicting eagle vision? because they're basically one and the same.
I don't know the decision-making process that went into this.
Oh, goddamn.
But Eagle Vision. I mean, in the game, it serves a very different. It serves a specific purpose in the game, but you could have easily ported it over, and it's not a thing. Eagle Vision is not a thing, and I imagine a large part of this is because they use the memories as nothing but action set pieces. There's the first one, which is as pretty typical chase. Then there's escape. It's a chase on horseback and with some carts involved. Then you get the chase through, and after they escape, again, summary execution, there's the parkour chase, and then there's the theoretical final blowout fight sequence when they reclaim the apple. And there's just a massive, massive problem with setting up the movie this way because it ignores the actual interesting parts in favor of nothing of any value.
And this is another consequence of not doing extensive research by playing the games, because if you had, you would understand that literally nobody plays these for the modern section. They are a fairly dull, slightly less so in the Ezio trilogy, framing device. Desmond Miles was for 5 games one of the biggest complaints anybody had, and they somehow took the part of the series that nobody liked and decided to make that the crux of an entire movie.
Pretty much.
That's like if you decided to make a Final Fantasy X movie and make the entire thing about Blitzball.
There's just so much that is missed here, in large part because, this is going to sound really weird, but I actually wouldn't hate if they actually did the next game around this story and actually let us monkey around in, near medieval Spain during this time period, because that's a fun setting. But for some reason, they just completely screwed the pooch when it came to adapting it into this medium.
Oh, I would love it if they would go and do that, because, they've tried to progress forward in time as frequently as possible, so you would have to really kind of backtrack from where you've been already. Not that should be a problem, because, genetic memory, it should allow you to go to and fro from any historical period you want to. You should be able to jump. I've heard that in the next movie that they're reportedly, if it happens, that one of their ideas is they want to do the Cold War, which strikes me as infinitely less interesting for the series than any place else you could possibly go. But, here's a good place to actually kind of, if you don't mind me making a bit of an aside.
No, go ahead.
If any of you out there are gamers who, for one reason or another, have not dipped a toe into this series yet, here's where I need to kind of contrast what Robert has just said about the movie against really the selling points of the game. And it's, first off, you really spend very little time in the modern day. The vast bulk majority of it you spend with the historical characters. And during that time, when the series is at its best, you get a wealth of character development and time spent with them. And the missions and the actual action is very well laid out and set up. You get to spend a lot of time kind of carrying out the strategic, stealthy elements of the assassination, the parts that seemingly would be some of the most fun sections to watch. The games are also much more smoothly shot. They're much more focused in terms of the camera work, as you would expect from something with a lot of stealth or espionage or assassination elements. So it's much prettier to look at. I can't stress enough just how gorgeous these games are to look at, and really they are what you would consider to be very special. What I guess the movie equivalent would be very special effects heavy. I mean, it's the kind of action that was effectively shot practically with absolute bare minimum CGI, and in fact more elaborately and Robert, feel free to disagree with me, the first three Bourne movies, pretty much every Daniel Craig Bond movie. Hell, I would throw the first Mission Impossible in. It's all stuff that is able to do what it sounds like this movie does, and do it really very, very bare bones and hard way. And there really are pretty intricate stories and really fascinating. And in terms of the historical context, this is something I've been dying to point out for the last few minutes. The teams that make the Assassin's Creed games go to great pains to maintain a lot of the historical accuracy as much as they possibly can, from the years and settings to an overall mandate that historical characters that die in the game must die within roughly the same time and roughly the same place in which they died in real life. They are fairly strict about that, and even kind of maintaining some semblance of parallel between the origins of the real life equivalent to the Assassin Order. And I apologize if I butchered this. The Nizari Ismailis, who were a branch, kind of a branch of Shia Islam, and the fact that the real life Templars had the full endorsement and financial backing of the Roman Catholic Church, particularly during the Crusades, when they were the appointed protectors of Christian pilgrims to the Holy Land. And it's really, in a way, kind of a fun, interactive history lesson. If you want to learn a little more about it, I would strongly suggest checking out two channels. Treesicle, Treesicle, The Story You Never Knew. They've done a handful of great Assassin's Creed videos where, in fact, one fairly recently where they kind of look at the entire historical scope of the franchise, where they point this out. But Game Theory, particularly Game Theory proper, the flagship show hosted by Matt Pat, has done a number of, in his typical style, exhaustively researched videos that take a good look at the franchise and set up how much thought goes into it. And that's why it just baffles me. Again, like you said, you have this fantastic, fascinating, historical playground setting that you can set this upon, that you can make these fictional characters a part of, and yet you're spending most of your time in the driest part of the entire universe. I mean, just imagine any game you've ever played, and the part you absolutely hate the very most, and imagine a movie version of that game where it takes place just strictly in that setting. Like, if you're a fan of the first Mass Effect and the entire movie takes place in the Mako, or a Final Fantasy VIII game where it's just one big continuous triple triad turn. Anything like that, or a fucking Street Fighter game where it's just nothing but all the characters trying to break the fucking car. That's what this sounds like.
Yeah, that's about right. You're not completely
right?
wrong.
I was hoping you would say, oh no, you're completely wrong. I'm starting to understand why Bart didn't really understand this. Because he posted on Facebook, he said, "What the hell did I just watch?" And I was thinking to myself, before he had to kind of bow out of tonight's show, I'm going to have to really explain, and we try not to do this on our shows as much as we can. I'm going to have to explain the missed opportunity and how the games tell the story in a much more engaging fashion.
Yeah, after seeing it myself, I mean, I imagine the main reason I was able to follow the plot such as it was is because I have played enough of the games to understand the basic setup and a lot of the structure that it uses. If you went into this blind, I mean, I can't imagine. It must have been just a terrible viewing experience.
It didn't have to be this way, though. Thank God they didn't try to implement the precursor element in this one. Can you imagine how confusing this would have got?
The weird thing, I'm not entirely sure it would have added too much of the confusion. Because you hit critical mass with confusing things. Like, there comes a point when you are just confused and you will be no more confused, regardless of tap dancing bears. You've just hit your saturation point. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of what we did here, as far as just, random confusing elements. Yeah, it's just kind of a mess. All right. Two things I want to get to before, because Mark's not here, we're monkeying with the format just a little bit. We are going to talk about, again, the money from the opening weekend. And then, but kind of in lieu of me yelling at every critic who gave this thing a positive review, though, one or two of them I think deserve mention, I think Sean and I are going to talk a little bit about some of the video game adaptations in general, and which ones are, kind of worth finding, and which ones we all just wish had stayed away. Because it's weird because so many video games, especially contemporary ones, are so cinematic in nature. It shouldn't be this hard.
No, it shouldn't. I should not be dreading the day when they finally make Uncharted, but I am.
I'm only dreading it because they're going to cast Mark Wahlberg instead of Nathan Fillion, and I'm going to throw stuff.
Correction, no. Mark Wahlberg has openly said that he's dropped off the project entirely.
Oh, thank heavens.
My problem with that is that's a particular movie where you can look at it and go, Hollywood, you've done this 3 times successfully already. In fact, of all people, George Lucas did them 3 separate times already. You have the basic blueprint of what to do here. Just follow these stories that are already laid out for you, and there you go. But David O. Russell was pretty much already kind of cut off the project because he wanted to do too much that blew in the face of or departed from what at the time were 3 Uncharted games. Obviously, we're up to 4 now, but,
Yeah, I mean, really, it shouldn't be this hard to make Indiana Jones movies successful, which is what they are. But then again, even Lucas and Spielberg couldn't quite do it with the most recent one, so there's that.
Right. But let's get through talking about this stupid fucking dumpster fire.
All right. On that note, it's time for it's time for Mark's favorite portion of the show because this thing done bombed.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All right. Assassin's Creed opened at an exceptionally disappointing number 5. Number one, once again, everyone take a guess, Rogue One. Brought in an additional $64 million and is well on its way to even greater financial success. I had a list. I do not have it anymore. I apologize. Rogue One is rapidly closing in on top 10 status. As far as that goes, it's, I believe, up around 11 or 12 at the moment. And look, this thing has free reign over the month of January as well. All right, I was bemoaning every movie that I was going to have to review in January, and none of them are going to touch this thing. I mean, eventually it'll start slipping a little bit, but no, there's no major releases for the next couple of months that are going to really oust Rogue One. It's going to make gobs and gobs of money and further assure Disney's dominance over the year. Opening at number 2 was Sing, to the surprise of no one. Illumination's latest offering made $35.3 million. I wish to double check that. I need independent confirmation. Hang on. Where are you? There you are. Yeah, okay. So its original box office, its opening weekend in the United States was right around, for last weekend was $35 million, but it opened a little bit earlier and in more limited release. Also, again, its actual release date was a little bit wonky, so that's not the most accurate representation of its total take, because Sing's total box office take is $129 million. Yeah, that also, of course, that includes its overseas releases as well. That's going to be a solid hit for Illumination. It's already almost profitable. Illumination Entertainment makes good movies on acceptable budgets and makes big returns. This thing's budget was only $75 million, most of which I imagine went to song rights. So that's a big hit for Illumination. Next, opening over Christmas was Passengers, which opened at number 3. Took in 15.1 over the last weekend. Its grand total is only $30 million overall. That thing had a $110 million budget. That's yeah. What studio is responsible for that? Columbia. Yeah, Columbia's not having a good year. Next up, once again, you will notice not Assassin's Creed. For some reason, the holiday comedy duo of James Franco and Bryan Cranston in Why Him pulled in $11 million. I don't know why you would go to see that. However, there are those of you that did. And that's likely going to be profitable. It had a very small budget of $38 million. So, again, may not be a smash hit, but it'll probably wind up breaking even. And then again, opening at 5 is Assassin's Creed with its somewhat paltry $10 million.
Yikes. horrible.
Its worldwide box office take to date is $36.5 million. This thing's budget was a whopping $125 million.
Oh my God!
I have no idea what they spent it on.
This thing is going to have to do so spectacularly well overseas in order to even make its money back.
Yeah, I have zero hope for this. This thing's gonna flop.
Yeah.
Rounding out the top 10, we had Disney's Moana. It continues to truck along. Drama Fences, again, another kind of historical comedy drama, La La Land, which cinephiles went to see because Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone star. The R-rated comedy Office Christmas Party seems to have bombed pretty hard. And Will Smith's Please Give Me an Oscar campaign continues with Collateral Beauty, and no one cares. So, yeah, this thing's
wait.
going down in flames.
Collateral Beauty, I want to see if we're thinking of the exact same movie. Is that the one where he's mourning a lost family member or some such nonsense, and his horrible friends hire actors to basically play the spirits of like the grieving process or something in order to snap him the hell out of it?
Yeah, that's about right. To the best of my knowledge, that is an accurate assessment and summation of that movie.
Like I said, I only very vaguely remember what that was about because I read an article a few weeks ago that was dubbing it the very worst movie of the year.
Well, now that's somewhat unfair, because I had to sit, as someone who had to sit through, what was it? I had to sit through Inferno, which wasn't very good. What was the other? What was the real one that just kind of bothered me that I yelled about? Yeah, no, it can't possibly be the worst movie of the year because there was a Medea movie released this year. So just fundamentally speaking.
God. and I say that as someone for whom Will Smith is very hit or miss at the best.
Oh no, there was the Ben-Hur, the newest Ben-Hur movie, which was let's not discuss that. There was that crappy Mechanic sequel. Oh no, Jason Bourne, Suicide Squad, and Ghostbusters all came out this year. Believe me, Collateral Beauty is not the worst movie that has come out this year. Just, I can't imagine it is.
And you know what? It just kind of hit me what that movie is.
It's a Christmas Carol.
My God, it's no. I was going to say it sounds more like a terrible, brutal, combined hate fuck of A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, that's about right.
Oh my God! You know, I might be remembering that article incorrectly. That they might have just said that it was one of the worst holiday movies.
That I'd buy.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I have, or it was either that or they were saying that it might be the worst movie of Will Smith's career.
I don't know. I have seen Wild Wild West.
I was going to say that's a bold statement considering that nobody has forgotten that the man made both After Earth and Wild Wild West.
All right. I'm going to very briefly yell at a couple of these critics because there's a grand total of like 20 that are positive reviews of this movie.
Please yell at the fucking idiot from IndieWire who called it the best video game movie ever made.
Yeah, there is that idiot. Let's go ahead and start there. And my own personal descent into hell always is accompanied by the following soundbite. I'm sure you all know it well.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right. First up, we have David, since we're going to start, let's start with this guy. David Ehrlich of IndieWire, top critic. This is why I yell at these people, because they are paid for this. Declaring this the best video game movie ever made is the kind of backhanded compliment that sounds like hyperbole, but the description fits the bill on both counts. Ugh. Okay. Let's start with best video game movie ever made, because you're wrong. You are just fundamentally wrong.
No. Oh, he is so far off base that I now just wonder if maybe this is the only video game movie he's ever seen.
I would have to assume, because I'm not entirely sure I would say this is categorically better than Doom.
That's true.
I mean, if you want to, don't pay the movie a backhanded compliment. That's an exercise in futility. You review the movie. This is not the best video game adaptation. It's not the most enjoyable. It's not the most fundamentally sound. It's probably the best acted, which is about as far as I'd go. But I'd say, the worst written. Because all it succeeds in doing is confusing the viewer. I mean, look, at least Doom, for all of its faults, was easy enough to follow from a plot perspective. This becomes a mess to the point where people walk out of the movie not understanding what exactly went on here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here I have to yell. Katie Walsh from the Tribune News Service, top critic, another person who is paid for this. Despite the tortured writing, Kurzel shoots the heck out of the film, especially the flashbacks where Aguilar and his assassin companion Maria parkour around ancient Andalusia, kicking some serious Templar butt. So we're ignoring the fact that they all wind up dead. No, clearly a successful campaign. The flashbacks to me are what should be the best part of the movie, but they're mired by being nothing but action set pieces that don't really work. It's just so mired in the current idea that for an action sequence to be good, we must cut 40 times and shake the camera for half of them. And it's, no, just so much no. Here's one that, and I really do have, there's a bit I have to yell about with this one too. Dave Calhoun from Time Out, also top critic. The relentless gloom can feel oppressive. This is not a gloomy movie, all right? There's not really an emotional attachment overarching to the whole thing. And if there is, it's certainly not gloom. Plenty of ambition here. Yeah, no. Especially in the layered storytelling and woozy sense of time and place, with plenty of soaring aerial shots that nod quietly to the all-seeing eye of a computer game. Look, I understand that big, soaring, panoramic aerial shots are a big part of the game. In fact, they're some of the best parts of any of the games. When you finally have scaled whatever massive monument you're scaling and get to the top and can sync up that portion of the map, it always looks awesome. I'm not entirely sure why this movie felt compelled to add swooping aerial shots to every freaking scene. Because it's not just panoramic to give you a sense of place. It's, oh, they're in the midst of a horse chase. We must have swooping aerial shots.
Well, it bears noting that those climbing sections where you get up to the highest parts of various cities as possible. Like, for example, during the Ezio trilogy, when you have to climb to the very tip top of St. Peter's Basilica, the reason those exist is truly practical. It's because in-game, your character is using that to get a lay of the land and pick out certain locations and basically being able to survey and map the city. That's why they exist. They aren't there in the game just strictly for the purpose of looking gorgeous, although they certainly accomplish that purpose. They're practical, but the actual action of the game, more often than not, takes place very much either on a street or rooftop level. I mean, there's a lot of stealth. There's a lot of navigating crowds unseen. It's one of the biggest parts, especially of the Ezio trilogy, are the sections wherein you have to be really clever, your distractions, your assassination methods, pickpocketing, infiltration. That
kind of subtlety could have been really helpful to this movie.
From the sounds of it, I mean, I'm thinking of sections like Ezio having to masquerade as a minstrel to get into a gathering. Oh God, I had another one. Oh, the entire Carnival sequence from Assassin's Creed 2. All the times when, to eliminate guards and distractions, I would have to hide in the bushes around smoke bombs and poison guards to create a ruckus. Things like that. All stuff that does not require a grand panoramic wide establishing shot.
All right, and the final one I want to yell about before we kind of dovetail into just video game adaptations in general for the final segment. From Alan Jones of the Radio Times. At least this person has the decency. No, he's not a top critic, but he probably did get paid for this. Radio Times is a legitimate publication. Coupled with the parkour-inspired stunts, Kurzel insists on keeping the CGI in check for the feel of an old-school adventure that executes the action with a great deal of care and attention to detail. I don't know what you saw. Believe me, the CGI was far from in check. Now, I understand it's cost prohibitive to actually rebuild, a Spanish city in Andalusia circa, the 1500s. That's fair. We don't need it for every... Again, the majority of this movie feels like it was green screened. Now, this is either a monumental failure of the green screening process to get me into the movie, or such a huge failure by the cinematography to shoot something real and make the viewer think, well, you did that on a computer. No, I don't know what movie you watched, but it pretty clearly wasn't this one. All right, we've yelled at a couple of these people for... And one of the things that the people who have said positive things about this have tended to say that this is one of the best video game adaptations, either in recent memory or just period, God. Which I fundamentally disagree with. However, in the interest of fairness, I know what my list is, as far as video game adaptations that I consider to be films of quality for one reason or another, and watchable for one reason or another. So,
okay.
I'm curious for you, because you put this on Facebook, and I want to give you the platform to say this again here. You have given them credit for what, 2.5 movies? As far as adaptations?
Well, no, I since expanded my list just a little bit, but not by much. And each one is kind of with good reason. Let's get the obvious one out of the way right now. The one that almost unanimously is regarded as, depending on who you ask, either the best video game movie made to date or the only really good video game movie made to date, and that's Mortal Kombat. I want to stress the first Mortal Kombat, not Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
I refuse to. I reject your reality where James Remar takes over for Christopher Lambert as Raiden.
Right. All love to James Remar, but no. Connor McLeod as the God of Thunder sold. But that aside, for a reason. Yes, objectively speaking, if you really want to be a snob about it, Mortal Kombat has its issues. Yes, it has hokey dialogue. No, it's not exactly King Lear as far as stories go. No, the effects do not all necessarily hold up over time, and when you look at it without the nostalgia goggles, yes, there are plot holes that stick out horribly and become just unavoidable once you notice them. That being said, in terms of a movie wherein you can tell that somebody gets the idea of just playing a video game in front of somebody who loves it, and that fan looking at the filmmaker and saying, "You see this? You see all of this? Take that and put it on the big screen." That's all. That is literally all I want. In that sense, Mortal Kombat succeeds in spades. The character models far and away or rather just the costume design and the look of the characters, they all do justice to their video game counterparts. Virtually nearly every single one. As martial arts movies go, it's actually pretty damn good, especially for a mid-90s effort. It wasn't necessarily overly ambitious, no, but again, bringing Mortal Kombat to life on the big screen, everything you could have asked for. Loaded with fan service. Great score. It's entertaining. It is exactly what you would want a Mortal Kombat movie to be, and that's what makes it enjoyable. Is if that's what you're in the mood for, you are going to get your money's worth. Now, that being said, the other ones. Silent Hill, I will give partial credit for the fact that even though in certain areas they did egregiously massacre the plot of the first game, and entirely unnecessarily, I might add, it looks and feels like a Silent Hill movie. It is appropriately creepy and ominous and unsettling, exactly where and how it needs to be. So I will give them credit for the first movie for that one. We're not going to go into the sequel.
Yeah, look, real briefly on Silent Hill. Personally, I give them full credit because I had never played a Silent Hill game before I saw the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand people's complaining about, altering with the source material in some ways.
Right.
In this instance, I tend to view Silent Hill simply as a very effective, very creepy horror movie on its own right. And like you said, it absolutely captures the feel of those games. And then there's the sequel wherein it seems like they heard all the complaints about the minutia of the Silent Hill world and said, well, here you go.
Yeah.
And we're all worse off for it.
Well, yeah, the problem was they tried to tell the story of Silent Hill 3, which many people regard as one of, if not the best game in the series. And again, they fucked the story up. They made it boring, unremarkable, and just a chore to sit through. Whereas, and when I say partial credit, I'm not talking like I'm giving it barely half credit. I mean, that's a movie. The first movie is one that I will sit down and watch any damn time, without any hesitation whatsoever. But since we're talking about movies that at least feel like how they're supposed to feel, and this is one that might sit wrong with a lot of people. The first Resident Evil movie. Okay. No, it does not include very many characters aside from certain enemies from the games. Yes, it is stocked with original characters, much like what Assassin's Creed did. However, I give that pretty high marks for the fact that for some of its issues, it's entertaining. It feels like a tense survival horror game, like a Resident Evil game should. And also, it manages to still be a damn good time. It feels like a story that is appropriately taking place within that universe, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. And pretty much every sequel that came after just gets worse. The second movie, it does an admirable enough job of trying to convey the story of kind of the story of Resident Evil 2. Or rather, I believe it's a little bit of a mashup of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil Nemesis. And it's actually all right. It's fairly fun, but I didn't enjoy it quite as much because it loses a lot of the survival horror aspect and becomes just nothing but another balls-out zombie action movie. After that, a few more. Tekken, despite whatever you've heard, is actually really another one that, for a martial arts movie, is really pretty good. Its story makes a hell of a lot more sense than the story of the games, and actually that's one reason why Namco patently disowns it, is because the story of the Tekken games makes no goddamn sense. It's utterly insane. They made a movie that still takes place in that universe, same characters, same very general premise, but gets rid of a lot of the nonsensical fuckery. Namco, in turn, decided to turn around and make their own Tekken movie, Blackjack, Hookers, that they claimed was going to be much more true to the games, and ultimately they ended up making something that was so confusing that it actually made even less sense if you had played the games, and was still confusing even if you came into it completely raw. Just an utter train wreck. By the same token, Dead or Alive was actually fairly fun, and it didn't pretend to be anything that the games themselves weren't. It was stupid, gratuitous, sexy times, fun that makes no sense. But if you're okay with that, if you love the DOA games, then you're going to have a great time watching it. After that, there's only really two more, and that's the fact that the very first Tomb Raider movie, in my opinion, was a pretty faithful adaptation. It's fun to watch, and if you're only familiar with the franchise from the superb Square Enix reboot, you're going to want to look at me like I just grew a second head out of my shoulder. But Angelina Jolie, for the time, really was the perfect Lara Croft. There was nobody better to play her in terms of physicality, look, the feel of the character and the movie. And it doesn't hold up half bad. I mean, I would certainly sit down and watch it to this very day. Avoid the Cradle of Life completely. It's not worth it. But
the Cradle of Life is only required viewing for those of us that are huge fans of Gerard Butler. Everyone else, avoid it.
Yes, Yes, I would agree with that. And that brings me to the very last movie on this list, and it's one where feel free to chime in with your feedback to kind of segue into your list, because I know that when I mentioned this on Facebook, there was at least one person who disagreed with me, and that is Warcraft. Hear me out. That in the U.S., it was not exactly a commercial phenomenon. I get that it made the vast bulk of its movie overseas, especially in China, where WoW is still, as an MMO, is still pretty much a booming business to a certain extent. But in terms of a movie that sought to just be a love letter to the fans and the series and really stuck hard by its lore and didn't attempt to really improve on anything. By the way, if in the lead up to a video game movie you ever hear the filmmaker say, well, we wanted to take the source material, then add our own spin and improve it, do new things with it. No, avoid it. Avoid it entirely. Because that's a sign that you have someone who is viewing video games condescendingly, cute little brother medium who has a good idea, but big brother thinks they're so much smarter and can do it so much better. No. Blizzard nailed it. In terms of it being the grandest fan film ever made. It sticks to the lore. It gets it right. It is what you expect a Warcraft movie to be, especially considering that it's such a wide open MMO that doesn't have a real strict linear path that you can follow and just tell a cohesive story only one way. It's everything that I think we all hoped the Dungeons and Dragons movie would have been.
You just had to bring Jeremy Irons back into the discussion, didn't you?
Yes, I did, because again, this is a movie that was everything that movie felt like that we wanted out of that movie. When that silver screen turd was flung into theaters.
If your best option for one of the supporting characters is a Wayans brother, you can do better. And if you can't, rethink making the movie.
Right. But Warcraft is a quintessential ideal adaptation. I almost want to put it up there above Mortal Kombat, except for the fact that Mortal Kombat was far more financially successful for its time. But in terms of how to really show respect for your inspirations, no, Warcraft, in my opinion, absolutely nailed it, even if it didn't make enough to necessarily justify a sequel. And again, feel free to fire back with your thoughts on that one.
I said my piece about the Warcraft movie when we reviewed it. I don't have a whole lot to add as far as that goes. There's problems. There's issues of, appropriate narrative, of, allowing different people to act. They rush through things. And, and the following might sound weird considering how much biblical allusion there is within the Warcraft series, especially if you're, and bear in mind, I started playing with Warcraft 2. Like pre-Tides of Darkness, all right? I've played that within that franchise for the better part of my life to one degree or another. And I still felt they went a little bit heavy with the biblical allusions in the film. I actually have played through Warcraft Orcs and Humans, the first one, where the biggest number of groups you can micromanage is about 4. Your groups are limited to squads of 4 that you can hotkey and micromanage. So Believe me, I have suffered through that franchise in many ways. The only movie I agree with the majority of your list. The only thing I'd add, and this is pure cheese value, mind you, I have a severe soft spot for the Street Fighter movie.
Okay, I will throw that one in there with the asterisk because I was looking at most of mine, by and large, in terms of are they genuinely enjoyable. Street Fighter is enjoyable the way you and I would enjoy The Room and Birdemic.
I at least give Street Fighter a little bit more credit because it's clear everyone knew they were going for cheese, whereas, Tommy Wiseau, yeah, there's not a whole lot good to say about that. And my other soft spot as far as Street Fighter goes is I don't know how Raul Julia as an actor managed to make someone so grandiose and over the top as his take on M. Bison feel so genuine to that world. It's the weirdest thing, and I've tried to analyze it. I've tried to watch the movie and think about it, but I can't. I've never been able to put my finger on it, other than Raul Julia was a exceptional actor. But he takes again the typical megalomaniacal, warlord, and goes over the top with it even under those circumstances, but somehow that version of Bison is the most perfect fit within that world, and it makes no sense. This is one of those things that bees should not be able to fly, right? But they do. That shouldn't work, but it does.
And yet, for all his scenery chewing, my opinion, his finest moment of the entire movie, the one that I watched that entire movie waiting for, is the scene with Chun-Li, where no exaggeration, no ridiculous gesticulation, just simple, calm as can be, sociopathic dictator demeanor. The day M. Bison came to your village was the most important day of your life. For me, it was a Tuesday.
It is. It is such a great line, and the fact that it's the way he precedes it too. She's pouring her, and Ming-Na Wen, who is a very good actress as well, and
definitely
is the only Chun-Li. Kristen Kurek can jump off a bridge.
Oh yeah, fuck Kristen Kurek.
But she's pouring her heart out, explaining her desire for retribution, and his response is just, "I'm sorry, I don't remember any of it." You don't remember? Well, for you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. For me, it was Tuesday. It's a great line, and I mean, you get what I have to imagine was the deliberate irony of the Belgian accent coming out of Jean-Claude Van Damme as he plays Guile, the quintessential American.
Can you believe that years later, the late Raul Julier's performance, the same character would attempt to duplicate it with, and I hate to sound like I'm being terribly disrespectful to him, with fucking Neil McDonough.
Oh, it was such a bad idea.
Don't get me wrong.
Neil McDonough serves his role very well. He is a good supporting actor, and in the right circumstances, a good lead actor. He is not, under any circumstances, is he capable of being M. Bison.
Oh yeah, I mean to give you some idea, I actually rather enjoyed him on Arrow as Damien Dark, but surprisingly not so much for any of the dramatic moments. But for the episode, and it's Robert, I'm sorry if you don't watch the show and if it sounds like I'm just speaking gibberish to you, but the episode where Team Arrow enlists Vixen to help them steal the artifact, the totem that's the source of his power, and in just a bewildering sequence, I think it's Vixen actually sweeps through and manages to snatch it. I think it's either her or it might have been the Flash. I don't recall right off. But what I do remember is there's a beat of silence where he just pauses and then just looks around and just says, "Well, that happened."
He's a great straight man as far as that goes. Yeah, again, that's the only one I'd like to add. And I saw both Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat when they came out in the early to mid '90s. In large part because I was in martial arts at the time, and I have a great deal of appreciation for all of the choreography that went into both of those. Mortal Kombat in more ways because, and this is going back to my yelling about things in Assassin's Creed, they let the camera hold still when the actors are engaged in combat.
Oh God, the action scenes of Mortal Kombat, it really goes understated just how damn well shot they really were. They really did come across well.
I don't know who did the choreography or who set up all of that, but tremendous job.
And I can't believe I'm saying... Actually, no, I almost decided to take a snarky shot at Paul W.S. Anderson, but actually, that's one thing that I will say about his movies. For as bad as they routinely are, he does shoot them really, really well. They do look spectacular. They are pretty much a feast for the eyes. There's nothing artistic about them, but there's definitely lots of pretty cool things going on. And he knows how to shoot that stuff. The problem is a lot of the stuff he's shooting just doesn't make any goddamn sense. But Mortal Kombat was one time where everything somehow actually came together pretty well. I still love watching that Johnny Cage Scorpion fight.
That one and Liu Kang versus Reptile are my two favorites from that. Those are both just superb.
Yeah.
Superb fight
sequences. Yeah. Oh, definitely. But in contrast, I mentioned that Mortal Kombat has a lot of fan service in it. And it does. Lots of nods to little things from the game that everybody is going to be able to appreciate. Right down to, for no goddamn reason, the voiceover announcing Reptile.
Yep. All we needed was a toasty. And I'm not sure if they snuck that one in. I'd have to rewatch the movie.
I don't think they did. But by comparison, and again, this is just something that I've read about. I've heard about the little Easter egg in Assassin's Creed where there's a room in Abstergo where they're housing several different famed assassins' weapons, and there's Altair's sword and Connor Kenway's bow and Edward Kenway's flintlocks, and there's Jacob Fry's cane sword. That's
I think no, that's the girl. It's his sister who uses the cane sword.
Oh.
Yeah, he uses alternating brass knuckles and like kukris, which are really sweet, by the way.
Which that strikes me not as fan service that's setting up a sequel. It's not like James Rhodes in Iron Man looking over at the War Machine suit and then just saying in that fucking cheeseball Terrence Howard fashion, "Next time, baby." By the way, fuck off, Terrence Howard. But it's more so just fan service. Ha-ha, look, see, here's that thing you like from the games. Oh, we're so damn clever. No, no, you aren't. Actually, in fact, by putting those things in there, you're just reminding me of at least 4 of the better stories I wish you had decided to tell instead of this one. Don't remind me of something better that I would rather be playing or watching.
Yeah, that's about as good a place to end as we're going to get here. Well, Sean, thank you for being here. Again, with
Thank
some
you
of
for
the
having me.
last-minute changes. Anything you want to plug?
Nothing much. Generally speaking, you can often find me over at fpgnews.com, where as of late my creative input has been limited to the occasional podcast appearance, and I also routinely do live WWE Network event coverage, as in I essentially do over there what Mr. Winfree here does so very, 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 very well over at 411 Mania for UFC events. I provide segment-by-segment results and recaps in what I consider to be probably excruciating detail. My next appearance is going to be on January 20th, I think, either the 20th or 21st, when WWE Network presents the Royal Rumble. The Saturday before, I may or may not, I haven't decided yet, be doing live coverage of NXT TakeOver Orlando.
That one have the rematch between DIY and the Revival?
I actually need to catch up on my NXT a little bit. Although if they want to rematch DIY and Revival, I may very well take that night off from recapping just so I can sit back and enjoy it.
Hey, those two teams can go at it all day, every day, and I am 100% down.
Lately I'm actually kind of going on a bit of a binge wherein I've been, for a while now, I've been trying to watch NXT from the beginning up to present, going through about an episode or 2 per day. Right now, I'm just up to where the Revival have just debuted, but they're not the Revival yet. They're still Dash and Dawson, basically the Hard Knocks Rednecks. Joe has just debuted. They're building up to the live event in Tokyo where Finn Balor wins the NXT Championship off Kevin Owens. But I have obviously seen some current events too, and if you're a wrestling fan and you've never watched the Revival, but you've got some old school knowledge, okay, I want you to imagine Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard in their prime. Okay, there you go. You have the Revival. That is basically what they are. And Team DIY is the team of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, a couple of longtime indie standouts. Those two, I don't know if it's physically possible for them to have a bad match with each other. Just judging from the matches they've had so far. And I believe we're also getting, I think it's Bobby Roode versus, I believe it would now be Shinsuke Nakamura.
That'll be
for
fun.
the NXT Championship.
Yeah, I believe Nakamura
yeah.
is the current champion.
Well, Nakamura is the champion, but I'm trying to remember. I know that Roode won a Fatal 4-Way to win a title shot, but I don't recall if he's had that already on an episode of NXT, or if he just is if they're just doing the smart thing and cashing that in at NXT Orlando. Shinsuke Nakamura has rapidly become one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, anyway. But throw Bobby Roode in the mix. Oh, yes, I'll take that and a side of fries. Thank you. But anyway, I'm digressing like hell. That's predominantly where you can find me. I have some other ideas for some things I want to continue adding to the site in the new year, and I've talked to my esteemed colleague Stuart Lang about it. But those are on the back burner temporarily, so I can focus kind of through WrestleMania on just improving my pay-per-view coverage. And Oh, and also coming up in the next year, again, I'm sorry, Mark is much better about keeping track of these dates than I am. Mark Rodelich, Mr. Winfree's obviously ordinary co-host, and I are going to be rising from, I won't say the ashes of Long Road to Ruin. That makes me feel like it crashed and burned. But we're going to be rising from the end of it to debut a brand new show on the Rodelich and Broadcasting Network known as On Trial. We are going to pick one movie per show as opposed to a whole franchise, and we are going to basically toss a coin to decide who is going to defend it and who is going to prosecute it. It's going to be a very much kind of like a high school or collegiate debate type show. Civil, focused discussion, minimal snark, the odd joke here and there, I'm sure. But it's a way for us to lighten our workload and kind of give movies some fresh perspective. Oh, also our theme song is going to be the theme from Night Court.
Great. Now John Larroquette's in my head. Thanks for that.
Right exactly where that great man should be.
Yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth on John Larroquette. Because on the one hand, he was part of Boston Legal, which is my favorite television show of all time.
Mm-hmm.
On the other, I'm not sure I can handle him in more than about those, for want of a better phrase, a 30-minute burst.
He wasn't bad the few times he was on Chuck.
No, and he had an interesting character that recurred a couple of times in The Practice, and he's sadly the anchor in many ways for a miniseries that has a special place in my heart called The 10th Kingdom. But beyond that, I don't know. I go back and forth on him. All right. As for me, this coming Friday, that's Friday, the 30th. This is erroneously being labeled, which is why I have to be so clear about this. Friday, December 30th, I will be covering UFC 207 in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. Why several cable providers are promoting this event as being on Saturday the 30th is a little bit beyond me. But it is a very stacked card. The top two fights, I mean, we lost Cain Velasquez versus Fabricio Verdum, which kind of sucks because I was looking forward to that one.
Don't even try to tell me you were surprised.
Not surprised, just sucks. I was looking forward to that because I had Verdum taking him again.
My only surprise at it is the fact that it seems like it sounds like he's in such a bad way that I'm wondering if this maybe isn't a career-threatening issue. Like, is it something that's going to prevent him from possibly being cleared to fight again?
That depends. I don't know. I mean, Cain's personal doctor says he should be cleared to fight. The Nevada State Athletic Commission disagrees, but the Nevada State Athletic Commission is a circus. I'm not entirely sure how much credence. By the same token, Daniel Bryan claims that his personal doctors say, "Oh yeah, you're good to wrestle." Meanwhile, WWE doctors say, "No." So we lost that, which again I was kind of looking forward to that as a fight because Cain losing when not being in Mexico City would have amused me to find what excuse they came up with. But Ronda Rousey's coming back to fight Amanda Nunes in a fight I'm still waffling on because I can see it going either way. Dominic Cruz is fighting Cody Garbrandt. It's a little too soon for Garbrandt, but there's a lot to like about Garbrandt as a fighter. And I always love watching Dominic Cruz fight. Also, TJ Dillashaw fights Fat John Lineker. Look, you miss weight at least 3 times. Achievement unlocked, unreliable. You have earned the title of Fat.
And I believe that's a title that has only been earned at this point by, him and Gastelum?
Him, Kelvin Gastelum, and Charles Oliveira.
Yes, I always forget Charles Oliveira.
So do most people.
But
So I will be covering that this Thursday. So, again, not tomorrow, Wednesday, but the day after. Mark and I will be having our year in review for the year of 2016 from the movie perspective. We'll be talking about the finances of the year and wondering which deity Disney sacrificed, enough goats to have the year they did, because damn.
God
damn. We'll also talk about movies that we didn't get a chance to review here that we might want to discuss or put over. I have two in particular that I'll be bringing up. So you can hear us on that. That's our last. Yeah.
Remind me of something. Was Zootopia Disney's?
Yes.
Okay, because assuming that we're counting Marvel movies in there, which I imagine we would.
We are.
Disney owns Marvel. Okay, so that makes...
They have the top 5, and I think 6 of the top 10.
Yeah, because I'm kind of doing my own personal recapping, because now that Zootopia, Civil War...
Well, they have number 1, which is Civil War.
Yeah, Doctor Strange.
It's not in the top 10 yet. Oh, sorry, not in the top 5.
Moana.
Oh, here it is. Hang on. Number 1 is Captain America: Civil War.
And
you have Finding Dory.
Overall hits.
Well, they have Civil War, Finding Dory, Zootopia, all of which made over $1 billion. The Jungle Book, which almost did $1 billion. Doctor Strange is at number 10 right now. And the Rogue One will be there next week. Might be there by Thursday. The Secret Life of Pets actually surpassed Dawn of Justice to take the number 5 spot. Dawn of Justice is at 6, Deadpool's at 7, Suicide Squad at 8, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them at 9, and Doctor Strange at 10.
Did you mention Moana already?
Moana's actually struggling a little bit.
Is it really? See, yeah, you were talking in terms of pure rankings. I was just thinking in terms of just overall critical and audience successes.
Yeah, I'd include Moana in that. They had a slightly larger than average budget for Moana, so it'll be okay, but it's not going to be the smash hit. And Rogue One's going to make $1 billion.
And I would also kind of qualify that just a little bit by pointing out that Moana had to overcome something that's a bit unusual for Disney, and that is some notable bad press coming into it. Because obviously I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but there was a big stink made when they saw the design of, I want to say it was Maui.
Yeah. I yelled at them profusely when we reviewed the movie. It was...
You weren't the only one. For months prior to that, there were a lot of people who were none too happy about Maui, and yet when it came out...
No, I was fine with Maui. I was yelling at people who were criticizing it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, and I kind of felt the same way, because think about it.
How dare we have an accurate representation? I mean, and this was my point then. All the people who are yelling about it, oh no, you're stereotyping Polynesians and Islanders as overweight. If you'd actually made Maui look like The Rock, you would have been complaining that it was an inaccurate representation of their culture and set an unrealistic expectation. You're just a bunch of whiny malcontents. Shut up.
Well, yeah, exactly. Plus the fact that, if you got to think that if someone as proud of his Samoan heritage as Dwayne Johnson would have really objected to it, he would have probably said no. He's never been exactly the type to sell out his bloodline.
Yeah. So you can so Mark and I will be discussing that on Thursday. Coverage on Friday. Should to be an interesting card. And then this Sunday, the 1st of January, the 411 Ground and Pound radio show will be back. We took last Sunday off because Christmas. And we will be reviewing 207, and I think that's actually it, because The next event, which is Fight Night 103, BJ Penn gets fed to Yair Rodriguez, is actually taking place on Sunday the 15th of January, Dumbo. So we'll be previewing that the 8th. We'll have the 15th off, then we'll be back the 22nd. That's actually not that Fight Night card is not the worst. Rodriguez and Penn has some potential. Jimmy Rivera is going to beat up Brian Caraway.
I'm always down for that.
Court McGee and Ben Saunders has some potential to be an entertaining brawl. It's
Two
not the
fighters
worst.
I like.
It's not the worst. I got a soft spot for Court McGee. I saw him.
Yeah.
I saw him fighting on the local Salt Lake City circuit, so I've got a soft spot for him.
I like Court, and I've got a little bit of a soft spot for kind of extremely talented, very skilled fighters who are fun to watch, but just never quite seem to break through to that top tier. Like Ben Saunders kind of reminds me of Alan Belcher in a way. I was a huge Alan Belcher fan. Even though his fights were always a blast to watch, but he just never quite broke through to even necessarily being a gatekeeper.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that. That ought to be fun. And I think that's it. So again, Sean, thanks for being here. Much appreciated. You saved all the listeners from me talking to myself. All right. Again, Mark and I will be back on Thursday. I will see you all then. Until then, for Sean, I'm Robert, reminding everyone out there to please continue to be well, be safe, and behave. And in case you missed the next show, be safe over the holidays. For the love of all that's holy, it's not that hard not to get behind the wheel of a car if you're going to consume alcohol. Real easy. All right, I'll see you all next time, everyone. Thanks again for being here.